All right. I'm getting an update from Andina Copper, ANDC, on the TSX Venture.
That's right.
Joe, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. You're an honored guest here at Goldfinger Capital. I think this is round 3. Is that right?
That sounds right. That sounds
right. So yeah, just a little update on my end. I bought some stock.
Good to hear.
Some people that asked me questions from time to time bought some stock. So you have a little bit of a fan club over here at Goldfinger Capital. So very eager to get an update. How is Andina doing?
Sure. So when we last spoke, it was back in September, if I'm not mistaken, and that was not long after we had completed the acquisition of Rugby, and presumably we'd also put through the name change at that time from Pampa Metals to Andina Copper. Since then, we've made further board and strategic advisory appointments. We did a small raise at 40 cents back in October, and we started trading a couple of weeks ago on the TSX-V. So a lot certainly happened on the corporate and funding side of things. And we've also started drilling at Cobrasco. So we're now on our second drill hole at Cobrasco. And we're also into our field season now at Piuquenes in San Juan. And I suspect that the results that we put out in Mantau were also subsequent to our last call. So basically, we've had news on all 3 projects and plenty on the corporate and funding side as well.
Okay, let's work backwards. Let's
Sure.
start with Mantau.
Sure.
Mantau, I think, is a bit of a sleeper project. I don't really see anybody talking about this project, but it's in a very good location in Chile, a very prolific region for mining and copper gold, discoveries. So tell us about the latest from Mantau.
So at Mantau, we completed a first phase mapping and geochemistry sampling program. And what we've done is validated and expanded the area with high-grade rock chip samples for both copper and gold. So I think that was an important first pass for us in order to validate those historical results from the time of Rugby resources, and also to, I guess, design our next program there, which will be geophysics with some complementary mapping as well. So in terms of the project progress, I think it's going very well. It's obviously challenging to finance 3 projects. So this is our 3rd priority, and it's something that we're doing, secondary priority to Argentina and Colombia.
I see. So you're advancing that, but you're advancing it gradually. It's not the top priority right now.
I think what we'd have to say is that it's not going to be competing for capital with our other 2 projects. So we're gradually advancing it at the moment. That may change in the future, if more capital becomes available.
Are you more confident in what the interpretation is there? Like, what's the model? Is this a porphyry project? Is it a porphyry setting, or is there something else going on?
So this sits along the Chilean coastal belt, which is home to a number of globally significant IOCG deposits. It's immediately adjacent to Marimaca's recent sulfide discovery, and down the road from their oxide discovery. So there's a lot of different deposit styles in that area. And our next phase, really, once we got the geophysics out of the way, is drilling in order to validate what model we think this is most prospective for.
I see. Okay. Yeah, and the Marimaca project is extraordinary. I mean, there's been some incredible results there. So that's kind of what caught my attention to Mantau. a great location.
And a lot of other people's. So you mentioned it is a bit of a sleeper and not getting much attention. We've certainly had different interested parties knocking at our door, looking to earn in or to otherwise acquire the project. So I do think there is value there for us. And what we need to do is advance it before we look at any possible joint ventures or sale arrangements.
Very good. So moving over to Argentina and the San Juan province. So you said the field season has started.
So we have a field season that runs from about the 1st of November to the end of April. That's a function of the altitude and being at 3,800 meters above sea level. Our field season began early November, and between November and Christmas will consist of further field mapping and sampling, airborne mag geophysics, selective IP, and property-wide ground MT. The drill rig will start turning during the first week of January, and I think we'll do 3,000-4,000 meters over the balance of the season. So it's going to be a very significant work program there. The reality is that we have quite a large land package. It's about 2,500 hectares in total, and very little work's been done outside the main porphyry centres. So completing that geophysics and further mapping outside the known porphyries is going to be, very significant.
Did you see the news from your neighbor, at the Altar project? Rio Tinto, their Newton subsidiary backed out, I guess, walked away from the Altar project. And it's interesting because I kind of expected that. I wasn't surprised by that at all. But the stock dropped a lot, gave a trading opportunity for those who were paying attention, and it's rebounded all the way since. It's gone all the way back up.
Yeah, look, there was two significant announcements from our neighbour in the last month or so. One of them was the publication of the full form PEA, and that coincided with news that Newton had removed itself from the joint venture arrangement. My understanding, and this is simply reading the news releases, is that Newton were focused on more advanced projects, and I note that they're still active and involved in Los Azules, which is the McEwen mining project 40 kilometres up the road from Altar and indeed Piuquenes. With respect to the PEA, I think that's probably a more significant news item in the context of Piuquenes. And there's a number of scenarios contemplated there, which include focusing on higher grade, shallower resources, which is certainly something that Piuquenes offers. So I think what it's done, that PEA, is validate the prize that we have, and certainly shown that the sort of tons that we have may well help unlock some of these larger scale, deeper projects and lower grade projects, whether it's Altar, whether it's Los Azules or Glencore's El Pachon. There's a few prospective buyers out there.
I see. Yeah, that's very interesting. So basically, it makes more sense now upon reviewing the PEA for Altar that they would want to also acquire your project because it's higher grade and it's closer to surface.
Yeah, look, I think it's a very logical conclusion based on that PEA. The reality is that we are part of the same porphyry cluster. So Altar and Piuquenes, it's the same geological cluster. So that there's undoubted synergies between them. I think from our standpoint, the other aspect to note is that the PEA has validated the economics for a standalone open pit operation, which is one of the scenarios considered within the Aldebaran PEA. So I think from a standalone perspective, if we can add on additional tons this season, and potentially show additional porphyry centres, I think also the merits of Piuquenes as a standalone project also grows.
Okay, so this next phase of drilling is focused on the resource expansion then?
Look, I'd say it's focused on following up the discovery that we made earlier this year at Piuquenes East. And it's also focused on potentially testing other porphyry centres. So it's not necessarily trying to get to a phase where we report an initial resource, but it's simply saying we've got one reasonably known porphyry at the moment. We've got a second which has had one hole into ore grade mineralisation, and we'd like to expand on that to try and have a line of sight to more mineralised porphyries.
I see. And these new porphyry targets, is this primarily based upon IP, or what's guiding you to test these targets?
So this is a combination of surface mapping, and also geophysics. The property is under a large amount of cover, which means you wouldn't advocate drill testing any of these targets until we've done or completed the geophysics that's currently underway at the moment. So Altar have reported 7 mineralised porphyries on their property. We've got at least 2 and expect that there may well be others as well. So it's something that we're trying to validate now prior to getting a drill rig turning in a couple of weeks, beginning of January.
Very good. All right. Well, that's an important phase of drilling. That's a big catalyst. And then to Cobrasco in Colombia. So I think
yes,
this is the one that people are most focused on right now. And you're drilling.
Yes. Yep. So the Cobrasco project is a new discovery. It's had a few thousand meters drilling into it late in 2022, which has never been followed up for a number of reasons. So I think people are excited because it's not often that you find discoveries, a few thousand meters of drilling, and 3 years without any follow-up. So what we've done is immediately subsequent to completing the Rugby acquisition, we've set about building out our camp and our local operating team in Colombia. We re-entered Rugby's 3rd hole. The 3rd Rugby hole at Cobrasco was significant because it was stopped at 300 meters, and the grade from 156 meters to end of hole was 0.69 copper and 150 odd ppm moly. The last 2.6 meters of it were 2.7% copper, 7 grams of silver, and 155 ppm moly. So it was a very, very high grade hole that was stopped prematurely when Rugby ostensibly ran out of money. So we've re-entered that hole and we've drilled it down to, I think we cut that hole at about 770 meters. We've also started a 2nd hole, which is from the same drill platform, completely different azimuth and testing, a completely different target there. And that hole is progressing at the moment. I think we're 100 odd meters into that hole at the moment. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure was not to overpromise and underdeliver at Cobrasco. And what I'm referring to there is Cobrasco has been a little bit stop-start over the last few years. There's been a few attempts to re-engage and to recommence drilling. So we took the approach that we'd rather start doing it and let everyone know afterwards rather than over-promoting at the front end. So, depending on lab assay turnaround times, I think we may well have 2 holes to report in January. You would do them on a standalone basis. So perhaps 1st hole a month from now, 2nd hole a couple of weeks after.
Slide 15 in the presentation, you show the drill traces from the 3 Rugby holes at Cobrasco. You show the resistivity and chargeability. And obviously there's a pretty prominent, anomaly down there at depth that was tagged into in Rugby's holes 1 and 2. And then I guess hole 3 kind of was just getting into it when the hole ended. Is what you're seeing in your first hole, is it giving confirmation about what they found in their drilling?
So if you look at the Cobrasco project, as you mentioned there's what would appear to be quite a large system here, and that's been validated by geophysics, mapping, and also these 3 drill holes. The first drill hole that we've done is continuing a hole that was stopped at 300 meters in very high grade. So I think you'd have to say that this hole is a very, very low geological risk. We stopped the hole, it was about 780 meters. And the reason for doing that was not that we'd exited mineralization, but it appeared that we may have been in a lower grade zone and figured it's better not to push these expensive holes too deep if the grade is, dropping off. So in terms of what we're seeing at the first hole, I don't think you would say there's been any surprises, and it's simply a function that we re-entered a hole that had been validated by Rugby back in 2022. What the overarching comment that I think is very important here is that when you drill such a big system like this, you are going to have some holes that are, lower grade, some that are standout grade. You're going to have a mixed bag of results over the course of the first 10 to 20,000 meters as you understand the limits of the system as well as the grade profile. But the first few holes that we're doing are certainly low risk holes. So the idea is we need to validate the historical results, both with respect to grade and the size of the system. And then from there, you'd expect us to take incrementally more risk at, deeper holes, testing the margins of the system, so on and so forth. So I don't think there's any surprises at all in what we've seen so far, but I wouldn't have expected that from the first couple of holes.
Okay. Is this going to be, Andina hole 1, or are you going to call this the Cobrasco hole 4 and hole 5?
Well, it's a very good question. I'm not sure. I mean, look, this first hole, if you like, is hole 3B, meaning we actually re-entered the hole. It's not a twin hole. We re-entered the casing and started drilling from 300 meters. So it truly is an extension of a historical hole. Hole 4 is a brand new hole. It's from the same drill platform, completely different azimuth, testing a completely different target. So that may well have different reference and descriptor.
What would you say that hole 4 is testing an untested area?
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do here is, and remembering that very little drilling's been done to date. So 2,000 meters is not much for a project of this size and scale. So what we're trying to do is build out some cross sections and make sure we can start interpreting geology rather than just unstructured drilling, which takes you much longer to form an understanding of the mineralization, the grade profile. But so I guess to perhaps try and start that answer again, we could have taken an approach where you just put down holes, I won't say recklessly, but in a view of trying to show a wide spread of mineralization. The focus for us is trying to be able to put together coherent cross sections and be able to better understand phases, grade profile, and so on. And this hole here certainly has that objective. We're trying to link this up with the first hole to put together a coherent cross section with the first Rugby hole.
Okay, very good. Look, I'm an American. I follow a lot of companies in the US, and drilling in 2025 here in the States has been a freaking nightmare, Joe. I mean, the drill contractors it's a disaster. It's
So
like every drill program is over budget and over, it's like way behind schedule. How is it there at Cobrasco?
so the reality is that Cobrasco has benefited from 10-year social investment on the part of Rugby Resources, and Andina's put together very quickly a strong team with a lot of experience operating in Colombia, including myself. So operationally, we've had no issues at all. It has been smooth sailing, no lost time. It's heli-supported drilling, so the challenges have been mobilizing to jungle. But in terms of delays and timelines, there's been no sort of issues. Similarly, in Argentina, this is now our third field season there. So we're well versed in how to make that field season work. And we also benefit there from having acquired the property from someone who'd been working there for 20 odd years. So I'd say we've had no issues on either of those projects. And Mantau, where we've admittedly only done surface mapping, very well developed area, fantastic infrastructure, no sort of challenges working there either.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I know this is not a question focused on Andina, but you're an experienced mining guy. You're Australian, so you've worked in Australia, you've worked in Latin America. I'm not sure how much time you spend in Canada or the US, but my experience is drilling in the US is harder than it should be. And so it's like sometimes it's because the rocks are heavily fractured, like it's very oxidized, like faulted up rock, but it seems like in 2025 it should be easier than it appears to be.
I mean, if we look at the two holes that we've drilled to date at Cobrasco, the second one, which is under progress, we re-entered the first hole at 300 meters, which meant we got to bypass the fractured zone at the top of the hole. And on this second hole, we are drilling through the fractured zone, and therefore drilling rates are lower. But I once again, I go back to the point on our projects that we've gone into projects that have been drilled, and we do have an understanding of what to expect, given the benefit of those historical holes. So when I say there's been no surprises, the top of this hole has been slow, but we expected that. So I guess in the US, similarly, if you're drilling blind and it's your first time into a new project, you may well find that the rock isn't as compact and amenable for drilling as perhaps hoped.
Exactly. Yeah. But you think that some of these drill contractors would be more experienced and
Sure.
know how to handle it.
No.
Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's always impressive to me when a company has a smooth drill program, because I think that is actually relatively rare. Generally speaking, stuff goes wrong with drilling. It's kind of like the way it goes, right? Anyway, so sometimes the rig breaks down, right? But that sounds good. I mean, that sounds fantastic that this is going smoothly. You completed hole 1 to 770 meters down hole depth, and hole 2 is underway. So I heard you say you expect to have assays for hole 3B in January, and then potentially the assays for hole 4 maybe 3 or 4 weeks after hole 3B.
Yep. So this is a new project for us, and we're still need to understand assay turnaround times and that side of things. But I would expect that we'd have both holes. First hole being this 3B mid-January, and the second hole 3 weeks after that.
Okay. And then obviously social license and work there on the ground in Choco is very important. What can you tell us about your interactions or the company's work with the local community there?
So when we acquired Rugby, one of the things that we inherited in addition to the mining contract was 10 years invested in social license. And I think this is something that is often not appreciated by people when they reflect upon the true value of the Rugby acquisition to Andina Copper. The Rugby team, after 10 odd years, entered into a community access agreement known as a consulta previa with the constitutionally protected Afro-Colombian community that controlled the vast majority of the freehold in Choco. That is an agreement that is not easy to, or I wouldn't say it's not easy. You have a community and a culture that is pro-mining, but these sort of agreements take time. So a lot of time and effort went into that, and it's an agreement that is ratified and effectively a tripartite agreement between the company, the Cocomasia, the Afro-Colombian community, and the federal Colombian ministry. So the social license has always been very strong, or rather since we entered the project, the social license has been very, very strong. You also had an environmental license approved by the provincial authority for the purposes of exploration. So I'm talking about the camp facility, water access and things like that. And we walked straight into those agreements. So we've had a lot of continuity with personnel. We've made some minor sort of tweaks to our operating structure. But the reality is that the social license here has always been very strong. And there's been no change to that since we've arrived.
Can you remind me of the total size of the Cobrasco project? Like, what's the size of your claim package?
3,000 hectares. So you might recall that there's a northern portion of the tenure, which is about 1,500 meters. To the south of that, you have Rio Tinto MCC's Cometa project, which is about 1,500 meters. And then to the south of that, there's another 1,500 meters, which is Cobrasco South. So we have a 3,000 hectare package, 1,500 on the top, 1,500 on the bottom, and in the middle sits Rio Tinto and MCC.
Very good. Okay, yeah, that was a good refresher. Look, I think this is probably the final time we'll speak in 2025, Joe. So I'll give you the last word. What can investors expect from Andina Copper in 2026?
I take a lot of pride in the fact that we have delivered everything that we said we would do up until now. So that started when we acquired the Piuquenes project and told people very clearly that we would acquire a second complementary project, which we've done through the acquisition of Rugby Resources. We told people we'd change our board, we'd bring in new strategic advisors, we'd do a name change, and we'd uplist to the TSX-V. So all of that's been achieved in a relatively quick period of time. Next year is a year of exploration-driven share price accretion. We're going to be very, very active across our 3 projects, and I would expect a lot of news flow consistently over the year on exploration results. I think we will also be looking for commercial outcomes for our projects. And what I'm sort of getting at there is we'd obviously always indicated that we're not the sort of group that is going to develop a multi-billion capex Porphyry mine. We are the sort of group that look to find these opportunities, add value, and then monetize in some way, shape, or form. So this year, it's going to be exploration results. The first results will be at Cobrasco, and I think they're going to be very strong. You'll then have results out of Argentina. You'll then have results out of Chile. And I think towards the latter end of the year, there may well be commercial outcomes for perhaps one of our projects.
Very good. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing it again in the new year.
Thanks again.
Cheers.